Okay, welcome everyone to the Scottish Rugby Blueprint Bitesize webinar. My name is Neil Graham, Head of Game Development. Really pleased to launch more resources around the Blueprint. Today we're going to be looking at creating amazing learning environments, and we'll go into a bit of detail around how coaches and everyone in our game can adapt these principles and take them into their environments. I'm just going to hand round and we're going to introduce each other before we get going. So to my left, Scott Riddell.
Yes, Scott Riddell, Game Development Manager for the Midlands region, and very excited to be on this new initiative.
James Wade, Senior Game Development Manager, as excited as Scotty. I will definitely mess this up at some point. Fletch.
Thank you, John Fletcher, Head of Pathway Male, Female and Elite Coach Development. So, and I'm buzzing. I am curious why I have a different microphone. However, I'm sure that will be revealed later. Let's go.
Yeah, excited. As you can probably see, this is our first one, but we're going to give it a go. 15 minutes, we're capping these two. There'll be a series of them launched throughout the Six Nations period, and love to get your feedback on them. This is a different way of delivering for us, so any thoughts you have, please fire them through. So the learning principles on the screen. This was launched back in November when we launched the Blueprint through our roadshows, but the learning principles of learning are what we want to look at today, and the acronym of LEARN is a starting point. So we're just each going to go through and give a little bit of an introduction to each principle. Learning to learn is the first one, but we actually came up with a much better phrase, which is love to learn, and I think this needs adapted. So we'll get version 2 out to you soon. But learning to learn is all about us creating that culture of learning. It's such an important piece around any coach, referee, volunteer environment, where we want an environment where we're learning. That's what our sport is all about. We're going to every session, picking up something new, getting feedback, and really loving the process of being challenged. So some principles we're going to look at today about setting problems and challenges for players and coaches. That's going to be a big topic in the next part of this session, about how we can challenge each other as coaches, how we can get the best out of each other, and ultimately bring some examples to the table that you can take away in your clubs. So that's learning to learn. I'm going to hand over to Scotty about exploration.
Yeah, exploration, obviously, as it says there, giving players time to find their own solutions. If rugby is, one big problem, we want to solve that problem in a number of different ways and be able to facilitate that. Who are we as coaches to say you must do it one way or you can't do it another way? I think there'll always be a new way, there'll always be an innovative way. So let's go and find out what that might be.
Excellent. Cool. All right, adaptive, similar vein. As coaches, we tend to kind of write session plans to our agenda and to our plans, but one thing we're really keen to explore is how do you actually adapt everything you're doing to what's in front of you to bring value out of it. So yeah, being adaptive is massive because it enables you to kind of maybe plan bits and pieces, but then tweak things depending what's in front of you. Give choices to players is a massive one. So whether it's how to score differently or even like co-create a bit of session design, it's something we really want to do in the Blueprint. So I think the adaptation part is going to be a really good one to dive into later.
And that then moves us on to the R part of learn.
Good spelling.
Around reflection, clearly it's part of sort of the learning loop around this. Do something, spend some time and reflect on it, and then ultimately make some decisions whether you want to change, adapt, and then go and do it again. So clearly reflection is really, really important. So I think the key word of that is time. So how can we as coaches, how can we give ourselves time? How can we afford the players' time in the training sessions, and then also around the problems that they interact with. I'm sure we'll go on and talk about it. Like the players are only as good as the problems that they will interact. So we need to try and create our sessions where we have problem setting at the heart of it, and that's definitely going to help people sort of reflect and learn and move. And the key is transfer as well, just to ensure that we're not just sort of talking about learning, so people aren't necessarily just sort of verbalizing it, but it's definitely the doing bit as well. So from reflection, can we change the actions? Can we get that transfer that's important around our principles of learning? Let's go. Last one, who's got it?
So no one is the same. We've talked a lot in developing this piece of work in the Blueprint about how we differentiate between each other, between players, between coaches, and this is just very much about acknowledging that people learn at different speeds. We need to tailor our sessions so that we can stretch and challenge and provide enough support around all individuals in our team. So we're not just making the top 10% better and working with those who are maybe new to the game and missing the people in the middle. We're making it really a great learning environment for everyone. And that's what we're going to talk about throughout some of our principles, is making an environment that is inclusive as well as set at the right challenge level. So look, there are learning principles. We have a bit of a statement which we'll pull up on screen if I can get it to work, which is probably the first technological challenge we've had.
Good work.
We've got it. We nailed it. Which is, and we've changed it from flower to thistle. So no copyright challenges hopefully going on. But when a thistle doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the thistle. And ultimately that philosophy is about us recognizing that the environment that we operate in, whether that be work, life, play, it's the environment that will let us grow, will challenge us. And, as coaches, sometimes we need to look at the environment that we've set as to find the answers as to why things aren't coming off, why a player isn't developing or is. And we're obviously going to talk about the environment a lot today, about how we can challenge the environment, how we can tweak it, how we can play around with our environment, how we can get feedback on our environment. We'll talk a lot about how feedback processes are really important to creating a good learning culture.
Can I just go off script a little bit? Can
absolutely.
I ask you, Scotty, really experienced as a player and becoming more experienced as a coach, like, what's the best learning environment that you've been in, and how did they get the best out of you?
Good question, Fletch. I think it has to be supportive, challenging, enjoyable. I like playing games, so there has to be an element of competition in there as well. I think that if everyone's striving to get better and there's an element of competition between your peers, yourself, externally maybe as well, then that breeds a good environment to get better. I think that has to be managed as well. I mean, winning's important, but it's not the be all and end all. It's more about a process. I think the environment can contribute massively to that process.
So whereabouts was it? Like, which team you're talking about?
You're trying to get me to talk about sevens here, but
he loves talking about sevens. Everyone.
Which sevens coach?
I do enjoy sevens. I think the challenge of sevens is performing under extreme physical duress, where you're absolutely blowing. And I think the nature of that, where people can get a wee bit wound up, a wee bit narky at each other when everyone's exhausted, I think leads to building strong relationships. I think it demands an element of respect for the people who are on your team, who you're playing against, maybe the referee as well. And I think you just forge strong relationships from it. I think there's, looking back, like, the environment contributed to a lot of people who I'm still very close with through shared experiences, good and bad. And if you're encompassing that in a whole thing, then there's obviously challenges within that, but it's something I look back fondly upon.
So, like, just maybe the headlines from what I heard there. So, best environment that you've been in would be around sevens in terms of a learning environment. That really got you going was around the competition, especially around, and then probably exaggerating the physical elements of the game, which is what sevens does, isn't it? Exaggerates that problem around, like, you will not blow as much in a, as when you play at sevens. So, and that shared experiences is what you spoke a lot about, trying to create an environment, a learning environment that, you have some experiences that you're going to sort of draw back on around you moving and getting better. But as you also said as well, just in terms of the other parts of the game, like the value stuff, the stuff that's really important in our sport. Nice, enjoyed that. Thanks, Mark. You get passionate when you talk about Scotland sevens. So enjoy it.
That's great interlude. Probably a good one. Back to him. Let's throw one back to him. Best learning environment as a coach. So as a coach, learning or an environment that's challenged you the most. Where have you developed the most? What environment?
I think it would be working in Pathway. I've been fortunate enough to be in a number of environments. So I think working in Pathway, you generally get, like, everybody's sort of really motivated to be there. There's a lot of creativity within Pathway. Like, people are prepared. We spoke about exploration. Like, people are definitely trying stuff. They're exploring stuff. They're having experiments. It's possibly not happening at the performance end as much, which is a shame. There's no reason why it shouldn't be, but so it would be in pathway. I'm really enjoying my time with Scottish Rugby, working with the FOSROC academies, and the stuff that we're doing, like how we're scoring the game, some of the rule changes, law changes that we've brought in, how the coaches are behaving around that, how the players are responding to it. So yeah, I would say Scottish Rugby pathway is a particularly really strong learning environment.
It's a great environment to try new things and challenge ourselves. I guess James, bringing you in on this from a obviously recent advanced coaching course. We've had 2 cohorts, 1 finish and 1 start. Anything coming out of that from a learning environment perspective?
I think it's the shared learning aspect which we kind of explored this time. So we just had I think it was last Friday, we had the people who are finishing off their course from last year and the people starting off this year all in the same room, and there were just opportunities to kind of just learn what have you been through, what sort of things you picked up, pinching ideas as well around there with something called crafted coaching, which is basically the coaches pick an area of the game they really want to just dive into throughout the season. So we've actually tried to build it so there's an opportunity for, like, say, what is a great learning environment. For me, collaboration is a massive one, and being able to kind of like break down these real formal barriers, and at the end of the day we're all there to kind of make rugby better. So we've tried to put that as a principle for the advanced coaching course. So yeah, hopefully the feedback on it is quite decent. Just chatting to the coaches on the back of Friday, they were like, quite enthused to go out and pick parts of the game. Some really interesting topics coming out.
Ton of similarities as well from the
definitely.
craft projects, but they all went about it in an individual way, which I think is part of it as well.
Choice, innit? Like, you choose what you want to do. We're not going to tell you what you want to do. You pick an area of the game that you think is going to make value to your environment, and just rip into it, basically. Share. And there was some real good learnings about it. Like, some people crashed and burned and were quite honest about, like, this was a nightmare this season. We had people who nearly got teams relegated, which seems to be the curse of the advanced coaching course. Coming the course will get you better, and will ultimately get teams relegated. But it's the fact that it was honest and it was like collaborative was like, it was really good to see as well.
Yeah, good. Yeah, all part of learning, I guess, isn't it? All that principle. Yeah, it's a good example. And I think, going on to what we're going to talk about in a minute is the environment underpins everything we do. And as coaches, we should always think about how we're setting, what type of environment we want to set, what type of culture we want to set. And that'll link into these learn principles a lot. So just looking ahead at some practical tips, we're just going to look at some coach challenge examples. So we've talked a lot about how we can bring to life the learn principles, what practical things we can do to allow ourselves an opportunity to engage with our players. So look on the slides, you'll see 8 challenges that we've picked from a group. We've chosen these based on our experiences that work, and we're just going to go around the room and pick probably our favourite one. So start with Fletch. Mate, what's your favourite sort of challenge on there, and just delve into that a bit for us.
Bottom right, pair up players at the start of the session, ask them to provide feedback to each other. So I think it's a great challenge for coaches. So it's definitely the top 2. The thing players would want more than anything else would be choice, so definitely be aware of that in your environment. And then the second one would be around feedback, and I think it's really smart if a coach can create peer-to-peer feedback. I think it's where the ninja coaches are when they're starting to get players to coach each other a bit. So to be really intentional about it, I've seen it done a number of times. I've done it quite a bit myself. You can actually be sort of mindful of who you pair with who. You can do that, and so give that some thought, like who do you want to pair up, and definitely it's an interest in terms of like what they are thinking. You can listen into those conversations about what's important to them. Might be something that you haven't even considered. They're definitely more bothered. My experiences would be about what each other are thinking of each other. So I think it's a great way of providing a really good learning environment. And then clearly, if you take the learn principles, like that differentiation is definitely what I'm thinking about. Definitely their skills of reflection around that learning loop is definitely some stuff that I'm also thinking about. And I think if you get stuck into it as coaches, I think you'll just see some great results, like people having good conversations, people getting better. That's ultimately what you want in your environment.
Amazing. Any comments?
You don't just want them sitting on their phones the whole time, so can you get them to actually speak to each other?
Some of the
youngsters.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you might want to give them a little bit of like scaffolding or support around it in terms of the questions that they ask type stuff. Sometimes it becomes too general. Sometimes they're not good at digging a little bit. Just tell me more about that. What else? How did it feel? You know, some stuff that experienced coaches would be doing. But yeah, I think it's a real good challenge for coaches to get their players to do exactly that. Pair up, give each other feedback, what sort of stuff they're noticing, what's important, what do they want to get better at.
What's a ninja coach? You mentioned ninja coach there.
Ninja coach would be like, I think that's where the mastery is, to be honest. So yeah, I'm sure we're going to come on another one of these bite-sized Blethers within the Blueprint. But yeah, I think the best environments is where the coaches are affording the players opportunities to coach each other. I don't see enough of it. It would be my observation, but however, I do see some of it. The players will do it. Like if we weren't there, they would definitely be coaching each other and helping each other out. So yeah, I think it's something we can go after.
We've talked a lot about that in-game chat that we don't necessarily see enough of, and this can help reinforce the need for it. So how many times are players in-game actually talking to each other? If they're not doing it in training, they're probably not going to do it in a game. So, you know, it maybe gets into some habits, some good habits about engaging with each other during stoppages and play, just about what opportunities are in the game for us, or dare I say in training. So I think we've talked a lot about the need to just enforce that message a lot about communication and connecting with each other.
Yeah, it does. It come out a little bit what I said. Like sometimes the players are not interacting and communicating and coaching each other because there actually isn't any problems to solve. Like, just be mindful. So when a coach will say to me, and sometimes they do, around the players are not that strong on their communication, they don't need to communicate. Like, there's nothing for them to talk about. Like, you've already given them all the answers. They're all playing the same rules. Everybody kind of knows what's going on. So again, be mindful around your session design. What's the problems they're interacting with? That's how you're going to develop high levels of communication. Maybe something else, maybe so sort of constrain them that they can't have conversations during the breaks, or they can only have conversations during. So there's lots of things that we can play around with it. But definitely, as a challenge, pairing up players, I think is a great one. I think it's a great one for coaches to consider. Who's next?
Yeah, brilliant. Well, Jamesy, what's your favourite on there?
I'm going for only coach when the ball is in play, because I think, what does coach mean, for example? Like, so it jumps out as being quite traditional. Like, you can only as a coach lead, but actually when the ball in play, there's so many ways to coach effectively. So we talk about on our coaching courses, actually the coach's eye being a massive important one. So even though it says only coach when the ball is played, that might just sitting back and watching and just taking it all in, because we talk about affording opportunities for players to communicate. How many times as coaches do we kind of override the noise by building energy, which is good in parts, but I like where that's going.
What even is coaching, James?
So
Big question.
So we talked about, there was a great bit of advice that someone gave to me, and it was only taught to the players about rugby when the session starts, when the session's finished. Out with that, just get to know the players, and that is coaching, because coaching connection. So we talk a lot about on coaching courses that you coach people, the subject's rugby. So when only coaching the ball is in play, encourage, enthuse, nudge questions, being amongst it, maybe do a bit of refereeing, but it's not just telling players what to do and giving feedback. It's a massively all-encompassing thing. So only coach with the ball in play. I think it's as coach we could decide what that is for ourselves. So for example, I need to shut up more when games are on because I build a lot of energy, so I just want to watch more. So I will watch more, maybe then give players a bit of feedback when in between games. Let players generate feedback, like Fletch says, allow them to do that. So I like that because it's quite broad and makes you think about what is coaching. It's a great question. What is coaching? You might actually, as soon as the game's over, chat to a player about what's uni been like this week, what have you been up to, get to know the player a bit. So
you just said something there, James, about like the choice behind these challenges. It's up to you as coach, your coaching team, what you use. Yeah. But you mentioned there that if you as a coaching team you recognise or you got feedback that maybe you do talk too much, or as a coaching team you spend too long in huddles. The activity rates are dropping and players want more. That might be a challenge that actually gets you more activity in a session. That you when activity stops, you can't do your traditional group huddle type of things, or you maybe put a limit on those. Limit yourselves to two group interventions throughout the session.
So no huddles up there, is there?
Yeah, it's good.
Challenge.
Exactly.
That's a good one to do.
So it's a really nice challenge to define, as you say, what you mean for a coaching team. So nice one, Scotty. What's your favourite?
Yeah, the thistle purple reflect at the start and the end of the session with players. So for me, I think like that reflective practice, if you're going to reflect, you're going to need to think about something. So you can maybe be quite explicit with what you're looking to achieve from the session. You can then maybe share that session plan with the players or allow them to adjust that, as we've previously mentioned. But just that focus on having good conversations and actual meaningful conversations where we can, you know, have an element of trust, and we're able to dig a wee bit deeper into, well, look, how was your performance throughout that session? How did you enjoy it? How did you find it? And then hopefully there's, you know, honesty from the player as well to be able to receive maybe a little bit of feedback or give feedback as well. So heavily linked into feedback. So, but yeah, I think it's about that cycle of, you know, plan, do, review, and how we review it. If we're going to review something, we need to reflect on it. And that's positive and maybe negative as well.
You're quite a skilled reflector, Scotty. So have you always been like that, or were there certain things that coaches did to kind of encourage you to reflect more?
I think that's probably over like skilled. To be a skilled reflector, I think you can maybe dig into the realms of overthinking at times, and I think that's a potential pitfall of thinking about things a wee bit too much. So I think, yeah, for me it would just be to try and actually to switch off from a wee bit, and it might be, you know, mechanisms or processes that allow you to do that. So it's like, well, give some guide rails, as Fletch might say, like what was your two best interventions at the session? What was one decision that if you could have it again, could you do it differently? What would you do differently? So that might be that ask the better question to get a more reflective answer.
If you say what went well, it's quite a big thing to ask.
Communication.
Yes, communication is the answer you always get back.
Generally.
What could do better? Communication.
So
that's a good one, isn't it? Just being a bit more purposeful about that question to help like the players kind of focusing on one area.
I mean, I think this one, it's a really good point, Scotty, about a reflection. It needs a focal point. The reflection needs to have a focal point, and that focal point should be the objectives of the session. It should what you're trying to get from it, either as a team, an individual, or as a coach. So the point should be, we're reflecting based on what we tried to do. Did it go well based on what we intended to do?
Did we do what we said? Did we do what we said? Did we do what we said we were going to do?
Yeah.
Did we do what we say we're going to do?
And it might be okay that you didn't. It might be okay that you didn't do, because it might be that actually during the course of the session it just changed, tact, and we agreed upon that. Yeah. So there might be reasons.
It was adaptive.
It's a really important point, and I think it links in with the first one, which is involving players in the session design. I think a real challenge for a coach is to try, and I would encourage all coaches to have a go at this, is involve players properly in session design. Give it a go. What that looks like, it might be that you get a couple of senior players. We've talked about this before. Couple of senior players on the Monday before the Tuesday night session, and you design the session with them. Maybe even they design the session, and you get an opportunity to input into it, but it's their session, they own it. You can change it around, but it from a learning development perspective, there's nothing like a player engaging in the session than if they've helped design it. If they've helped design their own game, their own drill activity, whatever, their own scoring system, their own reward mechanism, there'll be the engagement. You'll see, I'm pretty confident, a massive spike in engagement. So give it a go. Give that learning piece a go, where players, fellow coaches, dare I say it, in another one down here, parents, getting parents to feedback on your sessions. What are the kids saying in the car on the way home about the sessions? Is there anything we can do to tweak it? I think could be a really nice challenge for you as a group of coaches. Give it a go, and see what comes of it. So that these challenges that we've got here, we've got 8 of them. We'll not go into each of them. We'll put them on online and list a few more. We're even talking about producing some more challenges for coaches, players, and the environment, which will circulate around. But hopefully that gives you a good overview of things. And ultimately, what we want to happen, flick across, is for you to share your own challenges. So online on Twitter, #ChangeOurGame, #Blueprint Rugby. If you've got any challenges that you think would be useful to help create that learning environment, share them. And that would be great for us to learn from. It'd be helpful for us to share that with other people. But our key message is give it a go, really focus on that learning environment, and we look forward to hearing how it goes. Anything from you guys before we wrap up on part 1
I think it's
series of 10?
I only have one thing to add. It's a little bit tying into you, just around maybe coaches think around pre-mortem as well as post-mortem. So we're very good at the end, sort of summarising type stuff. We'd often do it professional rugby. It's on a Monday morning. Like just maybe at coaches be more mindful and intentional around that pre-mortem. Like what's the stuff we're going after? What might happen? What might be the best stuff? All of that. So get people thinking about thinking actually. So we're definitely at the start. Like, can we be more skillful as coaches around reflecting at the start what we're going after? I think we do the bit at the end really well, and the bit that you made me think of, I mentioned earlier, just around choice. Like we want our players to be involved in their own development. We want to create an environment that they are like involved all the way through, because it's them in terms of their learning. However, on the coaching challenge, like the best thing you can do for your team in your environment is for you to also move as a coach. So for you to be intentional around your development. So it's not just about you giving to the players all the time, like what are you giving to yourself and to your other coaches. But I've enjoyed that. Maybe next time I'll get a Scottish Rugby microphone.
Maybe. If you get promoted to that level, you might do.
I know I've got to work at it.
Scott used to work on the holding of the microphone a bit. He's not quite sure whether he's got a cigar or a mic. But anyway.
No, enjoy. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, folks.
Cheers.